Okay, guys, let's get started. Now, some of you taking this class, we went around the room a little bit just a few minutes ago, and I can see that you're coming at this from a lot of different angles here. Some of you have run a successful business before, well, more or less successful. Some of you have an idea for the kind of business that you want to start. Some of you are clearly looking to do a business someday, but you really don't have an idea as to exactly, what kind of a business that would be. And some of you, I think, are here probably for the networking and dating opportunities, which I would not blame you at all if that was your motivation for coming here. But then that's good too, because whatever your motivation is, I think we can do something in this class to help you get where you want to go. Given the fact, though, that you're coming from all different angles, though, I think the best way for me to start is to go 5,000 feet up in the air and talk about something that you really didn't come here to learn, but I feel the need to teach anyway, and that is what makes a business person successful. What does it mean to be a successful entrepreneur? What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? What kind of a person do you have to be successful when you run your own business? Is there a certain personality type that predicts, how successful you will be? That's what I want to talk about, the psychology, if you will, of entrepreneurs for the next 45 minutes or so. I want to talk about what makes, as I said in my introduction, I have worked with somewhere between 15 and 20,000 people who've started businesses of their own. Some have succeeded, some have crashed and burned, but when you work with that many folks, you see patterns. You see patterns in the ones that make it, and you see patterns in the ones that don't. And I really do believe, first of all, I do not believe that there's an entrepreneurial personality. Let's get that right on the table right now. There is no such thing as an entrepreneurial personality type. I don't care how type A you are or not, it doesn't matter. This is one of the great myths of entrepreneurship. When you think of an entrepreneur, you think of somebody who is macho, type A, self-confident, very assured of themselves. And that isn't always true at all. Some of my most successful entrepreneurs are that I've worked with over the years are very meek, mild, quiet people. They're not macho or type A at all. There is no, I love the magazines. You get magazines like Entrepreneur and Inc. Every once in a while they do this. They have a quiz. Do you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur? 10 true, false questions. I love these quizzes because they are so bogus. They don't mean anything at all. Would you rather A, read a book, B, take a class, C, start a business? I mean, come on. How hard is it to figure out the right answer, when you're doing these kind of tests? I'm not going to do that to you guys because I don't believe that there's such a thing as an entrepreneur. If I were to bring in some of my most successful, entrepreneurial clients and have you talk to them for a little bit, they look like you. Take a look around this room. This is what a successful entrepreneur looks like. There's no personality type. There's no, specific set of skills that you have to be a successful entrepreneur. Successful people, successful business people come from all walks of life, all nationalities, male, female, I don't care what you are. Your personality will not be an obstacle to becoming a successful entrepreneur. Let me give you sort of that good news to begin with. All right, I've just never seen it in my practice. But, there's a big but here. Having said that, there are certain qualities that I see in my successful entrepreneurial clients that I do not see in the ones that fail, in the ones that crash and burn. There are three things specifically I see going on with my successful clients that I don't see in my unsuccessful clients. And it's gotten to the point now where I can almost predict a client's success or failure based on how many of these three things I see going on in them. I don't want to call them personality traits because that sounds like you're born with them. I don't think you're born with these things. I think these are things you learn. A lot of my successful clients have become better as these things as they have gotten along in the business world. But I do think, though, that these three things, more than anything else, predict whether someone is going to be successful or a failure at running their own business. And because I see it so often and so frequently, I feel the need to begin this class by talking about what those three things are and what they really mean. Now, I'm going to have to put some words here on the board, and I can tell you right now, some of these words you're not going to like. Spoiler alert for those people watching on video, you may see some words on the board that you disagree with. In fact, there's one word in particular I know you're going to disagree with. But that's okay. This is not a course in semantics. This is a course in how to survive in business. I feel I need to use the words that best describe these three qualities that I'm describing. But also, too, I don't like mincing words either. There's a lot of mythology in this whole area of how to succeed in business. And the reason why there's so much bad information out there is because people are a little too politically correct sometimes when they talk about these things. I want to talk about these things as they really are, hopefully without offending anyone, but without also sugaring them down to the point where the information is not good. So again, try to ignore the words. If you can come up with a better word to describe the things I'm talking about, by all means, pick the word you like. I don't care. These are the words that I think best describe these three qualities that I think help you succeed in business. Okay, so Cliff, shut up, stop talking, start putting these words on the board. We want to go home. Okay, so there you go. There you go. Okay, let's start up these words. Here are the three qualities that successful entrepreneurs have that unsuccessful ones do not. First word, cynicism. Successful business people are cynical people. Now that's not a nice word, is it? If we're at a cocktail party and I point to someone you've never seen before and that person over there, that's a real cynical person. It doesn't sound like a compliment, does it? It doesn't sound like I'm saying something nice about them. But look the word up. Seriously, next time you're online, look at the Wikipedia article, look at the dictionary definition online, and see what it really means. It doesn't mean what you think it does. It doesn't mean pessimistic or negative. This is one part of the entrepreneur myth that I do buy into in a very big way. Successful people and the successful clients that I work with are not negative people. They tend to be positive people. They tend to look at the glass as half full rather than half empty. You've heard that expression, I'm sure. Negative people pessimists tend not to make very good entrepreneurs in general. I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a little bit of faith. In the world and the way the world works. I think you have to have that going on. Negative people tend not to be very good entrepreneurs in general. You have to have more of a positive way of looking at the world. But a cynic is something different. A cynic is neither an optimist or a pessimist. It's something quite different. A cynic is, first of all, a realist. Cynical people do not have illusions. They see the world the way it really is and what really goes on and what really motivates people. A cynical person is someone who is not a romantic. A good way to define a cynic is what they're not. A cynic is not a romantic. A cynic is not someone who falls in love with illusions. A cynic is not an intellectual, by the way. An intellectual being someone who falls in love with ideas for ideas' sake. That's why college professors tend to make terrible entrepreneurs. Seriously, have you ever wondered why it is why some of the most successful entrepreneurs are college dropouts? Or people that just barely got beyond high school? This is the reason why. If you're an intellectual, if you're a professional A student, you got there because you fell in love with ideas, for ideas' sake. You fell in love with theories and explanations and things like that. And that's great if you're a college professor, and that's great if you want to be an A student and get a PhD, right? If I want to get a PhD in sociology, what I have to do is I have to invent a whole new theory about why people do things and defend that in front of a panel of experts. That's what I got to do. But I'm not going for a PhD in sociology. I just want to run a business. I don't need to know the explanation for why things are the way they are. I don't need to know those things. I just need to know X works, Y does not. That's all I need to know. You know, don't get me wrong. I mean, I may be curious about the reason, but I don't care what the reason is. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying that cynics are stupid people. I am not saying that they're unintelligent. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is they're not in love with theories. They're not in love with the whys and wherefores of how the world works. In fact, I'll give you an example right now from my own law practice. I happen to work with a lot of dentists. Dentists, DDS or DMD. I have about 30 to 40 dentists in my client roster. I don't do healthcare law. I don't do anything like that, but I help them with their business stuff. So when an older dentist sells out to a younger one, I do the buy and sell, or the purchase and sale paperwork. And when they go out to hire a new assistant, I do the employment agreement. I do those kind of things for dentists. I'm actually well known. In fact, the local dental association has me on their website as a resource for legal services for dentists. I'm very well known within the dental community in this state. Other kinds of doctors, however, I don't know. I have hardly any. No podiatrists, no internists, no surgeons, hardly any. And it's not for want of trying. I speak at medical conventions, and I talk to doctors, and they laugh at my jokes just like the dentists do, but nothing happens. I don't get business out of it. If I go to a dental convention, I get 10 business cards, I get 9 of those people as clients. I go to a medical convention, nothing happens. Now, why? Because think about this. If an older podiatrist is looking to sell his practice to a younger one, I can use all my dental documents. All I got to do is take the DDS out, put a DPM in there, and boom, I'm done. It's exactly the same paperwork. So here's a situation, folks, where two identical groups of people have the same needs, right? Yet one group buys and the other group does not. Why? Answer, I don't know. I'm honest, and I'm honest about that. I haven't a clue why it is that dentists buy Clefenico and doctors do not. I haven't a clue. I don't know. But you know what? I don't care. Here's another piece of information from my practice. At any given time, my practice tends to skew slightly female. At any given time, my client mix is 55% women, 45% men. For most small business attorneys in this state, it would probably be the opposite. But for some reason, I tend to appeal more to women than I do to men, at least as a lawyer. Not in any other way, but as a lawyer, I appeal more to women than I do to men. Why is that? What is the secret to my appeal? Again, I don't know. I haven't a clue. If I were going for a PhD in sociology, this might be a very interesting dissertation question, wouldn't it? You know, why it is that under the same set of stimuli, certain groups buy things and certain don't. And that's a classic sociological exercise. And I would, you know, I'm sure there has been some research done on all this. I'm just not aware of it. But you know what? I don't care. I'm not going for a PhD in sociology. I just need to, I want to make money. And I don't care about the why and wherefore. I just need to know. Dentists, yes. Doctors, no. Women, somewhat more than men. That's all I have to know. So here's how it works in practice. So I get 2 phone calls from 2 groups of people that want me to speak for their association, for their organization. Group A is a bunch of doctors that want me to speak to them after their Wednesday afternoon golf game at the country club. Group B is the local chapter of NAWBO, the National Association of Women Business Owners. Given what I've just told you, who should I say yes to? Clearly, NAWBO, the women business owners. Women business owners tend to buy me more than men do, and the doctors don't buy. Oh, I may want to do the doctors maybe some other time, but because these 2 groups want me to speak at the same time, I can't say yes to both. I got to say no to one of the groups, and it's the doctors I'm going to blow off at this point. The women business owners are much more likely to give me business than the doctors do, and that's all I have to know. I don't have to know why it is. That's why intellectuals tend to make very terrible entrepreneurs, because they get too caught up in the whys and wherefores. They don't feel comfortable doing anything until they know why. You don't have to know why. You just have to know that it's so. Let somebody else figure out the why, the whys and wherefores. As Gilbert and Sullivan sang, never mind the whys and wherefores. It comes from HMS Pinafore. It's one of the hit songs from that operetta. Cynical people are realists, and they also do not pass judgment on what goes on in the world around them. They don't make moral judgments about these things. They don't say this is good or this is bad. They take life as it is. Oh, that's where society's going? Okay, how do I make money? How do I exploit that? That's what a cynical person does. Liquor stores. You've all spent some time in one, I'm sure. Some of you more than others, I'm sure. I can usually tell these. I'm only kidding. You can't. I can't tell those things. But you know liquor stores, right? Here's a statistic, by the way. This comes from the liquor industry, by the way, the retail liquor industry. On average, in the United States, what percentage of a liquor store's revenue comes from serving alcoholics? People who are addicted to alcohol in one form or another. Now, I don't know how they measure this, by the way. There are some standards, I understand, in the UK. They've established that someone who is an alcoholic is someone who, on average, has 28 or more drinks per week. That means you can drink a bottle, that sounds a little weird to me. That means that you can drink a bottle of wine a day and not be considered an alcoholic. I'm not so sure I'm buying that research, but there are ways that they quantify it. I don't know how they do it, to be honest with you. But this is actually a statistic that I read some time ago. On average, what percentage of a liquor store's revenue in the United States comes from serving alcoholics? Well, the answer will surprise you. Depending on the region of the United States, it's between 30 and 35%, which is pretty interesting. Now, that shouldn't surprise you, though. You've all heard the saying that 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. Well, if you're running a liquor store, who buys a bottle of Jack Black every 2 days? probably someone who has a little bit of a problemo, shall we say, right? Okay, by the way, what I've just told you totally blows the liquor store experience wide open. The next time you're in your liquor store, you're going to be looking at the people around you, and you're going to be saying, statistically, what Cliff is saying is that 1 out of 3 people in this room right now is an alcoholic. Him over there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he definitely. Oh, her? Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely her. And you know what? What you don't realize? They've all seen this video too. So they're looking at you saying, her over there. She does it. That kind of thing. You don't realize. You don't know who's seen this video. You don't know about this. But think about that. Now, how do you feel about that information? Some of you were looking at me like, whoa, boy, I didn't think it was that high. That's pretty bad. That's pretty. But you know what? If you're a liquor store owner, that's very valuable information if you think about it. I mean, let's put it this way. If you're running a liquor store, the last thing in the world you want to do is to disabuse people of their alcohol habits. You don't want to do that. Having an AA booth right next to the cash register in a liquor store is not going to get you a lot of business. It's going to scare the heck out of a lot of your customers, right? So a cynical liquor store owner says to himself, you know what? That's interesting information that Cliff gave me. What he's just told me is that for me to have a successful liquor store, I got to be located in a community that has a relatively high percentage of alcoholics and a relatively low number of competing liquor stores serving those alcoholics' needs. Now, stroke, my chin, where's a community like that in this area that would be suitable for my liquor store? That's how a cynical liquor store, interesting information, let's see how I can exploit that. They don't make judgments. They don't say it's good. They don't say it's bad. If you're a crusader, if you're a revolutionary, if you're a social activist, that's a very important thing for you to be. But for an entrepreneur, that's not at all what's important. What's important is people's behavior as they are. Perfect people do not buy things. I hate to say that. It's one of the most disillusioning things you will find when you start a business of your own. There are few perfect people out there. People ought to do a lot of things that they don't do. People ought to drink less. People ought to eat more organic produce. But I'll tell you 2 things, at least in this part of the country, and I'm pretty sure this applies nationwide. In my community, we have not had a liquor store go out of business in 20 years. In fact, we usually have a new liquor store added every 1 or 2 years. And whenever I go into my grocery store, the organic produce section is always very well stocked. It's the non-organic stuff that is sold out. Again, people should do these things, but they don't. A cynical entrepreneur looks at the world the way it is, not as it should be, not as they want it to be. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we shouldn't move for a better world. I think we absolutely should. But if you're looking to make money as an entrepreneur, you're not going to be making money selling to people who do not exist. Perfect people do not exist, except maybe in novels. That's about it in fiction, okay? This is what a cynical person is. It's somebody, not a pessimist, but somebody who takes a brutally realistic world at the world around them and is not taken in by illusions or dreams or fantasies or wishes or hopes. They see what they see and they figure out how to exploit that. FDR, the former president, said this well. He wants to find leadership as the art of figuring out where the crowd is going and then jumping out in front of them and start waving a flag. That's how he defined leadership. Figure out where the crowd is going and then get out in front of them and say, okay, guys, this way. Okay, people, this way. It was a beautiful quote. That is the perfect expression of cynicism, as I'm trying to define it here. Okay. Second quality of successful entrepreneurs, insecurity. Insecurity. Fear. Now, this blows you away. When you think of an entrepreneur, you think of someone who's very macho, self-confident, right? Very sure of themselves. Let me tell you, not true. If I were to bring in 10 of my most successful clients and had you ask them questions, let you do a Q&A with them, I guarantee all of you would come away and say to me next week, Cliff, these are 10 of the most neurotic people I've ever met in my life. I don't think they're sure of anything. This is not what I was expecting. And you'd be very right. Successful people tend to be nervous about what they don't know. They're always looking for problems, even when none exist. You never get to the point where you feel that you know what you're doing. And that's a hard point for a lot of people to say. All right, let me sort of give you, you want a quiz? Okay, you want a quiz? Here's my quiz. Okay, I'll give you a little pop quiz, since you kind of have earned it. Okay, have you ever seen a rabbit up close, not a cartoon rabbit, but a real living, breathing one, in a petting zoo or in your backyard or whatever? When you look at the rabbit, what's the first thing you notice about the rabbit? What's it doing? It's like vibrating, isn't it? Some part of the rabbit is always in motion. The nose is you did it beautifully, by the way. You just did the nose twinkling thing. I love that. I love that. It's a shame it's not on the video, but you did the whole nose thing. You know, but the ears are twitching. The fur is going back and forth. A rabbit is never really at rest unless it's dead, of course. If it's a living rabbit, this thing is constantly in motion. It never sits still. And why is that? It's because the rabbit knows where it belongs in the food chain. The rabbit knows. This is not an animal that goes marauding through the forest, killing and eating every animal that crosses its path. This is an animal that, by and large, is at the other end of the Darwinian stick, and it knows that. It knows that it is more eaten than eater. And it knows that, and that's why this thing is hypersensitive to its environment. If he's sitting there munching on a leaf and he sees a leaf twitching at 10 o'clock, his little rabbit brain says, you know, that could be any one of a number of things. That could be just a leaky faucet or something like that. But you know what? That could be a hungry animal coming to eat me. I am not hanging around to find out. I'm getting the hell out of here. And he goes down his hole. This is how rabbits survive. With me so far? Now let's switch gears in the animal kingdom. Have you ever seen a lion up close and personal, a real one? Again, not a cartoon one, not the Lion King, right? Isn't that the biggest disappointment in the world? I mean, you go there expecting to see this majestic, roaring, you know, king of beasts, and what's the damn thing doing? You know, half the time when you get to the lion cage, the damn thing's sleeping. You got to throw a rock at it, you know, to do anything. And by the way, do not do this. I am not advocating throwing a rock at sleeping lions. It's not the smartest thing to do, especially if there's no cage between you and the lion. It's a very dumb thing to do. But no, seriously. And by the way, they're not just like this because they've been overfed or drugged or anything. They're like that in the wild too. You know, lions spend most of their time sleeping, quite frankly, you know. And why is that? Why is the lion that way? Well, like the rabbit, it too knows its place in the food chain. It knows that if it wants to take a nap in broad daylight on the middle of a rock, you know, exposed to the world, there aren't a whole lot of animals who are going to come up and say, hey, buddy, move along. This is not your rock. You know, they will be left alone. And that's why, except for those pesky two-legged things with the pith helmets and the shotguns, a lion doesn't have much to worry about in terms of the predators in the wild, okay? So now that I've given you this information, here is your pop quiz. When you are starting a business from scratch, do you more closely resemble A, the rabbit, or B, the lion? You're rabbits, people. You're absolutely rabbits. That is why insecurity is your best friend. Fear, while it's not pleasant, is one of your best friends. Whenever you start thinking that you know what you're doing, you're probably overlooking something that's out there in the environment. I tell clients, whenever a client tells me, Cliff, it's taken me a while, but I finally figured out this business, I know what I'm doing, my response to that is, you poor fool. There is a brick flying at your head at 90 miles an hour right now, and it's gonna cream you because you can't see it. You're not looking for it. I don't know where it is, but it's coming at you, and you don't know where it is. We all know, we could all give examples of big companies that went under because they missed a change in the market, right? You know, very often big companies get very self-satisfied. They get complacent. They get like that lion on the rock. And that's when they miss changes that their more nimble competitors are able to exploit and wipe them out of business. We're living in a world right now in which business models that have been around for hundreds of years are disappearing because of new challenges from technology, from overseas and all this stuff. And the companies, these are very powerful companies, they've got all the money in the world, they didn't see it coming, okay? Complacency, being too sure of yourself, kills you as an entrepreneur. The insecure rabbit lives longest. Fear is one of your best friends. If you don't have anything to worry about, find something to worry about. It's probably out there. Because I'll tell you something, if you are paranoid enough, sometimes what happens, and I've seen it happen in my practice, sometimes not only do you see threats looming before they become serious, you also spot new opportunities for your business because no one else is looking for them. You know, people are satisfied with the status quo, so they're not looking. I'll give you a very quick example. I think I have time for this. But a number of years ago, I knew somebody who ran, today they're called UPS stores. Years ago, they used to be called mailboxes, etc. They were a franchise. Basically, they offer private mailbox service. If you work out of your home like I do, you can open up a mailbox there, and instead of just being P.O. Box 123, you actually get a street address, your 123 Main Street, suite number 456. Very helpful when you have a business out of your home, but you don't want to look like you're working out of your home. There's bunches of them all over. They got taken over by UPS back in 2002. They're called UPS stores. Back in the 1980s, I knew a lady who ran one of these UPS stores, Mailboxes, Etc. franchises. It was a very tragic situation. She was from the Philippines. She was a war bride. She had married a Marine who was stationed at Subic Bay. We used to have a big naval base on the Philippines on Subic Bay. She married a Marine. They came to this country. She had 3 small children, and her husband had worked in a corporation, but he didn't like it, so he bought a Mailboxes, Etc. franchise and started running it. And all went well for a while until, unfortunately, he passed away very suddenly. He came down with pancreatic cancer. He was diagnosed in April, dead in June. I mean, it was that quickly, leaving, you know, this wife and 3 small children. Now, the wife, of course, was distraught. The franchise, though, did something very nice. They basically gave her a choice. They said, look, if you want, we can find someone to buy the store from you. You know, we'll definitely try to help you make that happen. Or if you want, we'll train you free of charge, and you can run the store. Now, here's a person who doesn't speak English that well. She's new to this country. She has 3 small children. You know, which would you have done if you were in that person's shoe? Well, she did something very brave. She decided to learn the franchise and run it. Because some friends of her told her that she would probably make more money doing that. So she started running this business, and at first she was paranoid. She didn't know what she was doing. You know, anytime a customer came in the store that she knew and she liked, she would pepper them with questions. Cliff, good, tell me, the color copier, are you going to use it? Is anybody going to use it? I don't know, should I spend the money on the color copier? You know, I don't know if what I should be doing here. She would constantly ask for advice from her customers, okay? So it got to the point where after a while, a bunch of us said, you know what? Stop doing this. Write your questions down, copy them, and put them in people's mailboxes. You know, do like a weekly questionnaire of your customers. Oh, good idea. So she started doing this. She started putting questionnaires in our boxes every week. And of course, we all loved her. We all knew her husband very well. So we tried to make this thing happen, okay? And, you know, she did okay for a while. One night, while she was putting her kids to bed, she went and read the newspaper. And you know how in every newspaper there's a listing of new businesses in town? You ever see that? Well, she saw something in the new business section that made her blood run cold. At the time, there was a franchise that used to compete with Mailboxes, Etc. And what they did was, they didn't spend any money looking for locations. What they did was they would look to see where Mailboxes, Etc. was going, and then they would move in right down the street and offer the same services for a significantly lower price. And by the way, there's a name for that. We call that a Burger King strategy, because that's how Burger King got started in the 1950s and 60s. They went look from where McDonald's was going, and they opened up right down the street with the flame broiled burgers and all that stuff. It's a very recognized and very legal strategy. Nothing illegal, immoral, or fattening about it. Saves you a lot of money on real estate research if you're trumpeting a business like that. So she saw somebody was opening up right down the street from her, and the name was suspiciously similar to this other franchise. So that night, she couldn't sleep. Now, somebody else might have just looked at that and said, I'm not going to worry about it, but not her. She would remember, she was paranoid because she saw enemies every day. She saw problems behind every bush. She couldn't even rest for a moment thinking that she knew what she was doing. So the next morning, she went into the store. She went next door and asked to use their phone. Why did she want to use their phone? Because she wanted to make a phone call and she didn't want it to be traced. So back to the store. She called the competing franchise, the competitor, and pretended to be a new person, saying, oh, hi there, I live in so-and-so town. I'm thinking about buying one of your franchises. Will you franchise to me? And the company came back and said, no, I'm sorry, I feel badly. We just sold your territory for our franchise. Oh, really? Where is it going to be? Right down the street. She was absolutely right. This was the competing franchise that was moving in on her turf. Terrified, you know, absolutely terrified. Let's face it, and she even said, I remember she was in tears with this. How can I compete with these people? They're Americans. They speak better English. They got a better model. They're cheaper than I am. You know, I mean, I'm gonna get wiped out here. You know, all my husband's money, my money, it's all gonna go up in flames. That's all she could think about for 3 weeks. But then she calmed down a little bit, and she had an idea. And this was the idea. Remember those questionnaires that she used to put around the boxes? One of the questions, if you're a new customer, how'd you find out about us? And it turns out that 90% of the people who answered these things all said the same thing. They said, we learned about you through Valpax. You know what Valpaks are? Those are those ads that come in the mail. You probably don't, some of you guys probably don't get them. If you're only here, if you're an exchange student, you probably don't get these. But they come in the mail. They're like a bunch of like 3x5 cards with different ads for different kinds of companies. There's like 30 different companies and stuff like that. All local businesses that are looking for business. And they team together and they send these things out. When you do a Valpak, have you ever noticed you never see two of any one thing? You never see two Chinese restaurants, you never see two Italian restaurants, you never see two plumbers. You know, the answer is when you buy into a Valpak, they give you what they call category exclusivity. You'll be the only one of your type of business in that Valpak. And she knew the Valpaks were where her new customers were coming from. So she had an idea. And the idea was this. She went out, her husband had a line of credit that she was on. She went out and she borrowed $30,000 on that line of credit and bought ads in every Valpak in the state. Not just in her area, immediate area, every Valpak in the state. Her reasoning was this: all my new customers are coming from Valpaks. That means the new store, the competitor that's moving in down the street, they're going to have to get into Valpaks. I'm going to block them out. I'm going to take an ad in all the Valpaks, and because they only give one of each type of business, I will be able to block that competitor out of the Valpaks. And she spent over $20,000 buying these ads, because you have to buy them for like a year or 2 years in advance. How many of you would do something like this if you felt there was a competitive threat coming, right? Well, a very interesting thing happened when she did this. She took out all these ads. I thought she was nuts. I'll be honest with you. I thought she was out of her mind. I thought, well, what are you wasting all that money for? There's much more effective ways you can do stuff. But she really felt that this was going to work, all right? Well, a very interesting thing happened. All of a sudden, a lot of people started coming into the store and buying mailboxes. She had a flood of new business coming in the store, which had no explanation. What's going on here? It got to the point after a while where she sold out all her boxes. Fortunately, the store next door became vacant. She called the landlord. I'll never forget this. She called the landlord and actually said, the store next door, I'll buy it. I'm going to rent it. Send me the lease. I don't care what the rent is. I'm going to rent the store. Didn't even negotiate the lease. Didn't even care what the rent was. How many of you would, as a lawyer? I mean, I'm furious at this woman. They're doing this. This is crazy. I need, Cliff, I need the space. I need the space. She broke out the wall. She put all new boxes in. Within 3 months, she had filled that up, all the boxes in that space. Then another store became available. She got that space. She did exactly the same. Within a year's time, she had one of the biggest and fastest growing mailboxes, et cetera, in the entire national chain. Okay? And so what happened here? What happened? Well, you know what? It was those damn Valpaks. It turns out, now let's face it, if you live in town A and you work in town B, okay, what newspaper do you read? Do you read the newspaper where you live or where you work? Where you live, right? That's where you read your newspaper. And that's where all the other mailboxes, et cetera, were advertising. But if you have a sideline business and you want to have a mailboxes, et cetera, mailbox for that business, would you rather it be closer to where you live or where you work? Where you work. There were a lot of people who lived outside her area, but who worked in the area, who wanted to have a mailbox there. And the Valpaks were getting her message to all these people throughout the state. That's what happened. She tripled her business because of those Valpaks. Oh, what about that competitor, by the way, that one that was going to open up down the street? Never happened. Never opened its doors. Can't imagine why. The insecure rabbit lives longest. How many of you guys would do that, by the way? How many of you guys would do something that, she paid off all the debt. I understand she had 3 kids, all the 3 kids, she was able to put them through college with this business, you know. She ended up doing extremely well. And from what I understand, I haven't seen her in a while, she's still neurotic. Every time she gets a new customer, she peppers her with questions about, you know, why did you pick this store? Why do you do what you do? She never stops, because she still thinks of herself as that little immigrant woman. She doesn't think of herself as a successful business person. She can't accept that. You know, she's always going to be like that as much as, which is why probably no one's ever going to beat her in that business, at least in that particular area where she is. The insecure rabbit lives longest. Okay, guys, we've talked about these two. So far, you haven't been giving me a whole lot of pushback, okay? And really, there's not a whole lot of pushback to give, all right? But now I have to talk about the third one. And the third one's a bear, I have to tell you. This is where the rubber meets the road. I do have a word that perfectly describes the third quality that I look for in my successful entrepreneurial clients, but I guarantee it's a word you're not going to like. I guarantee you. This is, again, another word like cynicism that has a bad image, although it doesn't mean what you think it does, okay? Here's the deal. I mean, look, I don't want to get you ticked off. This is only the first night of class, right? So I don't want you all asking for your money back here. So I'm going to put 4 words down for this third quality, this third thing. You can pick the word that you like the best, but I think you know me well enough by now to know which one I think is the best one for this third quality. And it is the most essential one. How many of you here think of yourselves as ruthless people? This is an ugly word, isn't it? Not a nice word at all. If I'm going to party, I point to someone you don't know, and that's a real ruthless. The word that follows the ruthless is usually not a very nice word, right? But I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go home and I want you to look this word up. It doesn't mean what you think it does. It does not mean evil, unethical, vicious, or anything like that. It's simply another way of saying heedless or reckless. Someone who goes through life not worrying too much about the consequences of their actions is a ruthless person. And if you think about it, that's exactly what we mean when we say that someone is ruthless. When we say that someone is ruthless, we're saying when that person sees something they want, they get it. They go for it. A 2-year-old child is a perfectly ruthless human being. Perfectly ruthless. And some of you au pairs here, you know what I'm talking about, okay? This is why I said before about au pairs and mothers of young children having an advantage in the entrepreneurial world, because you know how to deal with this mindset. A 2-year-old child is not evil. A 2-year-old child is not unethical. They're not old enough to have a moral judgment. But if you've ever been around a 2-year-old, you know when they see something they want, they go for it. No filter. You know, and they know sometimes that they're going to get a timeout. They know, I know mom's going to give me a timeout probably, if I do this thing, but I know I'm around long enough to know she's not going to kill me because there's a place called prison, and she watches this show called Orange is the New Black. I don't think she wants to end up there, okay? And if it's an au pair, they're going to send her back to her home country, so forget it. I can get away with murder with those people, But that lamp is so cool, I am going for that lamp. That's how a 2-year-old child thinks. Now, all of us were 2-year-old children at one point. We all were like this at one point. What happened? Answer, we got socialized away from this by our teachers, by our parents, by our employers, by society. We have been taught to hold back our natural impulse to say, I want that, I'm going for it. To be a successful entrepreneur, I strongly suggest to you, all of you, that we have to get back to our inner 2-year-old. Again, entrepreneurs cannot afford to worry too much about the consequences of their actions. If they see an opportunity that's worth getting, it's only going to be there for a very short period of time. By the time they wait for everything to be perfect and all the stars to align properly, that opportunity is not going to be there anymore. The way to get there is simply to sharpen the elbows, go for it, and clean up whatever messes you make thereafter sometimes. And sometimes the thing that is in your way, the obstacle, is not a something, but a someone. Okay. You all know about Uber, the ride-sharing service. You probably been reading the newspapers lately. A lot of taxi drivers are very unhappy at Uber. And in some cities, in Europe, they're doing some really violent things to fight Uber because it's posing a real threat to their livelihood. A number of states are going after Uber now because they think that their drivers are employees rather than independent contractors. We're going to talk about that during the legal part of the program. We're going to talk about that. Not everybody likes Uber. Oh, the customers love it. If anybody here, everybody here use Uber? Wonderful service, very convenient, right? Lots of things, but a lot of people hate it. When you go into business for yourself, the worst way you could think is, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, everybody's going to love me. If you're an entrepreneur, a successful one especially, a lot of people are going to hate you for what you're doing. And they're going to try to throw up roadblocks. They may even try to kill you. I hate to say it. I have seen situations where, some of my clients were threatened with physical and bodily harm because, again, everybody's comfortable. They're all doing things. They're all comfortable with the local stores and whatnot. And now you're coming along like a bowling ball through 10 pins, and you're just upsetting everything and casting everything in 50 different directions. You're going to make some enemies, people, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with that situation. Anybody here, by the way, not know what chutzpah means, by the way? I wrote this word up. It's a Yiddish word. It basically means brazen audacity. I'm told you can't really explain it, but you can illustrate it. Someone who murders both of his parents, and then when he's caught, throws himself on the mercy of the court because he's an orphan, that is somebody with chutzpah. Okay, someone with brazen audacity. It's a Yiddish word, you can look it up. I hope I got the spelling right. But this is it. Don't get me wrong, your personality can be meek and mild and self-effacing, but shrinking violets do not make very good entrepreneurs. You've got to be pushy. You've got to get your message out there, and you have to stick your face in people's. Here's a great way to think of it. This is probably a much better metaphor. You are the grain of sand in an oyster. An oyster gets a grain of sand, and that's an irritant. It doesn't like the grain of sand. So it keeps trying with its muscle to get the grain of sand out. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, that grain of sand forms a shell of mucus, basically, around it and becomes a what? It becomes a pearl. Something beautiful, something precious, something valuable, but something that begins as an irritant to an oyster that is trying to expel for dozens of years, and that's how the pearl happens. That's what you are. You're the grain of sand that's upsetting things, and if you're any good, what will come out of that conflict will be a beautiful pearl that the world will recognize as a successful business. Maybe that's a more positive metaphor for what I'm trying to talk about. Now, this is a tough message, okay? I can see some of you kind of looking at me saying, yeah, I know what Cliff is saying, and he's right, but I don't have that. I'm not this kind of person. Do not sell yourself short. I have seen some of my clients do amazing things here and find the ruthlessness within them. All of you have the potential to be absolutely, utterly ruthless. All of you do. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your background is. In fact, I can think of one situation in which all of you in this room would be perfectly ruthless, and you would not even think about it. It wouldn't even cross your mind that you were being ruthless. Okay? Here's my example. You're in a supermarket with a small child under the age of 5, son, daughter, niece, nephew, grandchild, whatever, au pairs, one of your clients, okay, your kids, and you're going through the supermarket, they're in the basket playing, you leave the shopping cart for a second to look at the price on something, and when you turn around, you see a total stranger, let's say it's me, I'm picking the child up under my arms, and I'm walking rapidly toward the exit with this child in my arms. Tell me some of the things you're gonna do to me, quick, go. Kill, throw things, right. Yell, scream bloody murder. By the way, this is awfully ruthless behavior on your part. Do you know that? How do you know that I haven't just made a mistake? How do you know that, my little niece is sitting in a shopping cart in the next aisle over because Uncle Cliff forgot his glasses? I really think this is my kid. Does that thought even cross your mind? You're all grinning at me like I'm an idiot, right? Of course it doesn't cross your mind. How about the thought that all your friends and all your neighbors are in that supermarket right now, and they're hearing this meltdown, and when they look at this, what do they see? They see this man holding a child, and you're throwing crap at him. For a moment here, you look like the aggressor here, don't you? Do you even think about that? No, of course not. How about the fact that if I'm a kidnapper, if I'm a professional, if I do this for a living, I may have some weapons of mass destruction on me, a gun, a knife, or something like that. You're going to get hurt. Doesn't even cross your mind, does it? Well, the au pairs, of course, are all they're a little bit different. They're saying, well, some of the kids, there's a little bit more of a different calculus going on with the au pairs. But let's just say, of course, you love the kids too, and they'll support you if you don't do something at least. It depends. So, no, seriously. But why is it? Now, of course you're right. Why is it that you don't think of this as being ruthless? Why? Easy. Because you love this kid. You would take a bullet for this kid. You would. That's why you don't even think of it as ruthless, okay? So, if you start a business, things don't work out, we meet each other on the street, and I say, well, you could have done this, you could have done this, you could have done that to save the business. Don't tell me, well, Cliff, I just didn't feel good about those things. I just didn't feel, comfortable that I could do those kinds of things. Don't lie to yourself, and don't lie to me. Tell me the truth. You didn't care enough about your business. You didn't love your business the way that you love that child in the supermarket. That's what makes ruthlessness easy. If you love this baby, if you love this business, if you are passionate about it, if you are determined to make it successful, ruthlessness is easy. I have seen my clients get into some tough scrapes, and they had to do some really crazy things to save those businesses. Take my friend with the UPS store, by the way, the mailboxes, etc. How did you feel about her taking on all those Valpaks just to shut a competitor down before they could open their doors? That was pretty ruthless, wasn't it? I mean, I'm so sure she thought of it that way, but it was. I mean, here, shouldn't we, we're a capitalist society, don't we believe in giving business a chance and at least giving them a fighting start? Hell no. If you can squash that sucker in its cradle, you do it. That is what, and legally, by the way, you never break the law. Okay, I am a lawyer. I think I have an ethical duty to say that, but short of that, there's a lot of room for being ruthless. And you may have to go to that wall. I get a lot of calls from clients. My clients never ask me, Cliff, what's the law? What's the law on this? They never. I don't think anybody in my 35 years of practice has ever asked me that. You know what they do? They do say, though, I get calls every week. Cliff, I just did thus and such. How bad is it going to be? Okay? You know the saying, I would rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission? Have you ever heard that expression? That is a perfect example of what I am talking about here. I think I have time for one more story before we're done. And to show you, ruthlessness is not just about dealing with competitors. When you think of ruthlessness, you think about beating up on the competition, and that is one area where it comes up. We'll see other areas as well. But it also comes up in marketing, and it comes up in selling a lot too. I'm going to tell you a story, and this person epitomizes, she's the sweetest, loveliest person in the world, but she epitomizes this third category. I won't mention names, but she runs a local jewelry store here in the area. And I'm going to tell her about how she sold me a couple of years ago a very, very expensive tennis bracelet for my wife. Okay? I do happen to buy a lot of jewelry from this person. She happens to be very conveniently located. She's right next to my local supermarket. She also has a husband who's a designer, so she has a lot of unusual jewelry pieces. I see things there that I just don't see anywhere else, and it's all beautiful stuff. So I tend to do a lot of my jewelry shopping there. Well, Thanksgiving 2009, in the depths of the recession, I decided I stopped by the store because I wanted to get something from my wife for Christmas. Right? I walk in the store, she's all by herself, the store is empty. She looks at me, Cliff, hey, thank goodness you show up. Hey, Christmas is coming in a month. You want to buy something for your wife? Okay, look over here. I got this one, I got this, I got this. I got an estate thing in the other day. I got a whole table. Take a look at that. She looked great in that. She looked great in that. Stop, calm down, heel, stop, stay. Don't do this to me. And by the way, there's a reason why they're like that, by the way. The jewelry people especially. Hey, seriously, have you ever been in a jewelry store where you had to wait to be served? Have you ever had that? No. Chances are, most of the time, you're the only person in the store, right? I mean, at the holidays time when you're in the shopping mall, you go to the jewelry stores because that's where you get away from all the crowds, right? Usually there's there may be a couple, young couple looking at engagement rings over in the corner, or a kid looking at Pandora, but most of the time you have the store to yourself. This person tells me there are days when that doorbell rings only once or twice during the entire day. She only gets 1 or 2 customers a day in that store sometimes. When you're in a business like that, each customer has to go out either with a box or in one. You have to take no prisoners in a business like that. Every customer counts. And that's why they tend to be rather aggressive in their sales tactics. So I tell, look, you know me, I've shopped here for years, you know my wife, I like your stuff. Let me do some Zen shopping, let me look around. So sure enough, she calmed down, she let me do this. And of course I saw 2 things at the entire, opposite ends of the store. That's what happens. So I was kind of going over here and looking at it, and then I was kind of going over here and looking at it. And after the 3rd pass, she goes, Cliff, let me just take the 2 things out, put them side by side. You're making me seasick here looking at you. So she puts the 2 things out. The one piece A, was a rather gorgeous diamond and opal ring that she had on sale for a very good price. I'm going to call it X. The second piece B, was a gorgeous diamond tennis bracelet, about 5 carats worth of diamonds. That was 3X, 3 times the price of the other item. I won't get into specific numbers if that's okay. I don't want my wife may be looking at this video, so I got to be careful about that. Okay, so she looked at me and she goes, well, Cliff, forgive me, you're usually a pretty decisive guy, but it's definitely the bracelet. There's no question about it. You're absolutely right. It's a drop-dead wonderful piece, great stones, great carat weight. Your wife would look spectacular in it. I don't get it. You're usually a very decisive guy. I mean, is it the money? I said, well, it's partly the money. It is not a cheap piece of jewelry. I said, but it's not just that. But what else could it be, Cliff, if it's not the money? I said, well, here's the situation. I'm going to call her Mary. It's not her real name. Mary, look, here's the situation. My wife and I both work, for a living. She works in an office environment. Whenever I get her jewelry, I always want to get her pieces of jewelry that she can use, every day. You know, the opal ring, you know, that is a piece, the piece A, she could definitely wear that in an office environment. But the tennis bracelet, that's not really an office piece. That's the kind of thing you wear when you go to a charity ball or something like that. You're dressing up, you're dressed to the nines. And we just don't really do a whole lot of that kind of stuff. We're not really that kind of socialite kind of folks. We don't do that kind of stuff. I don't mind spending the money, but I want to spend the money on something I know she's going to wear, not something that, you know, she may use once every 2 or 3 years. Right? Now, forgive me. You're Mary now. What do you think? That's a pretty good, I gave it a pretty good defense there, didn't I? I did a pretty good job there, didn't I? Now, what would you do if you were Mary? What would you do? You'd probably start talking up the ring. You know you get a sale, right? I'm definitely interested in the ring. Or maybe you try to do like a 2-for-1 kind of thing where you try to do, right? But you're not Mary. Mary is the epitome of this. Here's what she did to me. And I swear to God, this is exactly how it played out. By the way, you should not try this with people you do not know very well. First of all, she does like this with the glasses. You know, the whole, you know, Snoopy as the buzzard kind of thing. She does that with the glasses. The minute someone does that to you, you know you're in trouble. You are going to have a tough time. And this is what she said to me. She goes, Cliff, we've known each other for a while. I know your wife very well. I kind of see you as friends as much as I do customers. Do you mind if I ask you a very personal question? No, Mary, ask away. Are you workaholics, the two of you? I said, okay, personal question. You nailed it. No, seriously, because I've heard this from you before. You know, you've said about being in an office environment and you want the jewelry to be practical. And don't get me wrong, I am sure your wife has loved every piece of jewelry you've ever bought for her. But let me tell you something about your wife you do not know. She is a woman. Well, Mary, I'm not the brightest person in the world, but I think I figured this out. No, I don't mean that. Women are romantic. Women like to fantasize. We do. It's part of who we are. You know, don't get me wrong. I'm sure she's loved every piece of jewelry, but I'm sure that deep in her heart, she is longing for you to buy a piece for her that is totally impractical. All the ladies in the room are smiling, you know, because you get this. Totally impractical. Something that doesn't have to do with the everyday, with the practical world. Something that, you know, that she will love just for what it is, not because of it's something that she has to wear in the office. And she will be, I guarantee, if you buy that tennis bracelet for her, when she opens that box on Christmas morning, she's not going to be able to speak for 10 minutes because this is the most romantic thing you have ever done in your marriage, and it's the last thing she's expecting from her dull, boring, workaholic husband. And as she's doing this, she's poking me in the chest and pushing me up against a wall. Seriously, she takes no prisoners. She does not take prisoners at all. Now, how was I reacting to this tirade? I mean, she's calling me a loser to my face. She's saying I don't understand my own wife. Forgive me, they don't teach you that in Selling 101, do they? Yeah. To do this, okay? So how am I reacting? I'm laughing like a kid. I know exactly what she's doing. You know, I'm not offended at all. Again, because I am a good customer. I know exactly what she's doing. Now, if I had been a total stranger, I might have been offended. I might have called the cops and sued for assault or something like that. But I know exactly what the game she's playing. I said, all right, Mary, if I buy the tennis bracelet, she doesn't like it, I can return it. Yes, absolutely no problem. I bought the tennis bracelet. Christmas morning, my wife opens the box and she could not speak for at least 15 minutes. Mary was 100% right. In fact, she said something else during this tirade. She goes, you know what? I got to tell you something. You guys need something to take your mind off work. If you buy this tennis bracelet, you're going to start joining organizations and you're going to start joining, you know, charities and stuff like that where they have charity balls because you're going to be looking for her to give her an opportunity to show off this bracelet. You're going to start getting more involved in your community, which you haven't been doing. You're going to make the world a better place because you buy this tennis bracelet. That was part of her sales pitch. And you know something? We have. Since buying this tennis bracelet and a couple of other pieces she's recommended, we have joined more organizations. We're involved now more in our community. We are doing things because we now have occasions where we can show off those kinds of pieces. Okay? She was 100% right, which is probably why I will always buy my jewelry. What did she do? Did she force this on me? Absolutely not. She did me one of the greatest favors that any salesperson has ever done for me because she knew me better than I did myself. Okay? Whatever you call that, what she did, that is what I'm talking about here. That is that thirst. You do not settle for X when with a little effort and by taking a couple of risks, you can get 3X, 3 times X. You never do that in business. Now, some of you are saying, what about ethics? How does ethics play into all this? The answer is it plays into a very important role. I am not saying that you should ever be unethical at all. Being ethical is essential in business. If people cannot trust your word, if people if people cannot take you at your word and rely on you to do the right thing with them as customers or as suppliers or as employees, you will not have a successful business. But a lot of people make the mistake of confusing being ethical with being nice. Being nice is not being ethical. Those are two very different concepts. Being ethical is essential in business. Being nice, and especially being nice to the wrong people, can get you killed. The trick is to know the difference between being ethical and being nice. Those are two very different concepts. So these are the three qualities that I look for in successful clients. I look for a cynical attitude toward life. I look for someone who's really not too sure of themselves, because I know that way they'll make fewer mistakes. And I look for something that will absolutely get what they want, no matter what obstacles cross their path, no matter what things or people get in their way. They will knock over all obstacles to get where they want to go, and hopefully not land in jail. These are the three qualities that define the successful entrepreneur and what separates them, not just from other business people, but from the mass of humanity, which is probably why we admire them, although sometimes we admire them very grudgingly. We don't always like successful entrepreneurs, but we sure as heck respect what they've done, don't we? Great, that's my little cold, I call that my cold shower speech, by the way. Was this what you came here to learn? Probably not, but I think I gave you something a lot more valuable just now. I hope I did. This is what it takes. We're not going to spend the whole class up here. You know, we're going to spend a lot of time going through marketing and business and operations and finance and all the other stuff that you normally get into. But as we go through all the material, you're going to see these three things looming in the background. You're going to see where these things tie into every area just about that we talk about in this class. This is the foundation stones upon which everything else gets built. Some of you are not going to be able to sleep tonight. I know it because of this, but give it some thought. Especially the part about ruthlessness being easy if you care enough. That's the most important lesson.